No one ever noticed him, not really. He moved quietly through the aisles, pushing his worn-out cart with squeaky wheels, a rag draped over his shoulder, and a mop in his hand. The library's floors sparkled because of him, yet students barely looked up. He was just a janitor. That's all they saw. Nathan sat near the back of the library, headphones tucked into his ears as he tried to cram for another physics exam. He hated that class. No matter how many hours he spent flipping through the thick, confusing textbook, nothing stuck. Numbers danced, concepts blurred, and formulas mocked him like they were in another language. He let out a groan and slammed the book shut. That's when he noticed the janitor again, sweeping, silent, always in the corner of the room like part of the furniture. What's the point of all this? Nathan muttered under his breath, not realizing he'd said it out loud. The janitor looked up. It was the first time Nathan really saw him. He had deep-set eyes, a weathered face, and a calmness that didn't match the silence of a broom. "You okay there, son?" Nathan hesitated. "Not really. I study, and I study, and I still fail." The janitor gave a small nod, leaning on his broom like it was a staff. "That can be frustrating, but sometimes the answer's not in the book." Nathan looked confused. "What do you mean?" The janitor smiled faintly, then turned back to his work without saying another word. Nathan rolled his eyes. Great! Cryptic advice from a janitor. What was he expecting? But something about that smile, subtle, knowing, stuck with him. Over the next few days, Nathan noticed the janitor more often. Always working, always watching, and oddly, always humming softly to himself. One evening, the library emptied earlier than usual. Nathan lingered behind, pretending to read, curiosity building inside him like a slow fire. "Why do you hum all the time?" Nathan finally asked. The janitor chuckled. "Keeps my rhythm steady. Cleaning is like music, you don't rush it. You move in time." Nathan blinked. "That's interesting." The janitor nodded toward the stack of papers scattered around Nathan. "What are you working on?" "Physics, but it might as well be Greek." The janitor walked over slowly. "Mind if I take a look?" Nathan laughed. "You know physics?" The janitor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a piece of paper and glanced at the problem. He said thoughtfully, "You're overcomplicating this. You're trying to memorize it. That won't work. You've got to feel the logic, not just repeat it." Nathan tilted his head. "Feel physics?" "Mm-hmm. Like music. It's a pattern. Patterns tell stories. And stories? Those are easy to remember." Nathan frowned, trying to wrap his head around that. "You used to study physics?" "I used to teach it," the janitor said quietly. "A long time ago." Nathan's mouth dropped open. "Wait, what? You were a teacher?" The janitor smiled again, this time tinged with something deeper, maybe regret, maybe peace. "Yes, at a university once. Life took a different turn." "But why? Are you a janitor now?" "That's a long story," he replied, "and not one I tell often. But maybe it's time." Nathan sat up straighter. "I want to hear it." The janitor took a seat across from him, for the first time shedding the quiet, invisible shell he always wore. "I was once like you," he began, "hungry to prove myself, obsessed with achievement. I wanted to be the smartest man in the room. I chased degrees, accolades, everything. I had talent, sure, but I lacked patience. I judged others who couldn't keep up. I thought anyone who failed just didn't try hard enough." Nathan listened, riveted. "One day, I failed. Not an exam, but a student. A boy who reminded me of, well, you. He came for help. I was too proud to admit I didn't know how to teach him in a way he understood. I brushed him off." The janitor looked down at his hands, calloused from years of scrubbing. He dropped out. "I later found out he was dealing with more than just physics. He was struggling at home, financially, emotionally. I missed the signs. I missed him. That broke me. I resigned soon after." Nathan felt a lump forming in his throat. "But why become a janitor?" The janitor shrugged. "I wanted to stay close to students, to education, even if it meant in silence, behind the scenes. At least I could make sure your spaces were clean, safe, maybe help in little ways. But you know so much. Why not go back?" The janitor smiled. "Some lessons aren't in the curriculum, and sometimes we're more useful where no one expects us. Nathan sat in silence for a long time. Can you help me understand physics? The janitor looked surprised, then pleased. I'd be honored. From that night on, something changed. Nathan would stay later at the library, not to cram aimlessly, but to learn. The janitor, Mr. Reynolds, as he finally introduced himself, had a way of explaining things that made the abstract feel real. He used stories, metaphors, music, even cleaning tools to explain difficult theories. When Nathan didn't understand Newton's laws, Mr. Reynolds used a rolling cart and a stack of books to demonstrate force and motion. When electricity concepts got messy, he'd mimic circuits using a mop bucket and valves to represent resistance and flow. Nathan started to smile during study sessions. He began to ask questions not just out of desperation, but curiosity. He wanted to know. He wanted to understand. And Mr. Reynolds? He seemed to light up with every lesson. You're good at this, Nathan said one night. You're not just a janitor. Mr. Reynolds chuckled. Maybe I'm both. Weeks passed. Nathan's grades began improving slowly at first, then noticeably. His physics teacher was stunned by the progress. Other students noticed too. Some even joined him in late-night library sessions. Who's tutoring you? They asked. Nathan hesitated. Just someone who knows how to explain things. Mr. Reynolds insisted on staying anonymous. It's not about me, he said. It's about you realizing what you're capable of. But the secret didn't stay hidden for long. One evening, the principal walked into the library and saw Mr. Reynolds using a paper shredder and two binders to demonstrate electromagnetic force to a group of students. What on earth? She started, but paused as she watched the students nod with clarity, laughing, finally understanding. Who taught you this? She asked one of the kids. They pointed. The janitor. She blinked. The janitor? Mr. Reynolds stood calmly, wiping his hands. Evening, ma'am. The principal didn't say anything for a moment. Then she smiled, half in awe. We need to talk. And that was the beginning of something bigger. The next day, whispers floated across the campus like drifting leaves. Did you hear about the janitor? He used to be a professor. He teaches physics better than the actual teacher. The story had taken on a life of its own, spreading faster than anyone could control. Some doubted it. Others were intrigued. But almost everyone, students and staff alike, started paying closer attention to the quiet man with the mop. Nathan watched nervously as Mr. Reynolds came into the library. That evening, he looked tired, as if the sudden spotlight had knocked the wind out of him. Still, he smiled. Looks like your little study group turned into a fan club, he said lightly, nudging Nathan's backpack with his foot. I didn't mean for it to happen, Nathan said. I think people need you. You've helped me more than anyone. Mr. Reynolds didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a seat and looked out the window, the sunset casting an orange glow on his face. Once, I thought I needed recognition, he finally said, but I've learned that the best lessons don't always come from the spotlight. Sometimes they come when no one's looking. Still, the principal hadn't forgotten what she saw. A week later, Mr. Reynolds was called into her office. Nathan waited outside nervously. When the door finally opened, Mr. Reynolds stepped out with a thoughtful expression. What happened? Nathan asked. She offered me something, he said. A position. To teach again, part-time, after my shifts. Nathan grinned. That's amazing. Mr. Reynolds chuckled. It's strange. I never thought I'd wear that hat again, but maybe it's time. That semester, a new after-school program launched science through stories. Mr. Reynolds was the instructor. Students flooded in, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. He transformed equations into real-life metaphors. He turned problem-solving into exploration. He made mistakes feel like part of the journey instead of the end of it. Nathan became his unofficial assistant. He helped organize the lessons, carried equipment, and even explained concepts he used to fail. Something inside him had shifted. Confidence bloomed. Curiosity returned. And for the first time in his life, he saw learning not as punishment, but as power. One evening after a particularly energetic session, Nathan sat beside Mr. Reynolds on the library steps. Do you ever regret it? He asked, walking away from it all. Mr. Reynolds leaned back, looking up at the stars. I used to, he admitted. But then I realized I didn't lose everything. I just found a different path. Sometimes the detour teaches you more than the destination. Nathan nodded slowly. You gave me more than grades. You gave me a second chance. A new way to think. Mr. Reynolds looked at him, eyes soft. And that's worth more than any degree on a wall. As weeks turned into months, more students found their way to Mr. Reynolds' sessions. Struggling learners, top performers, even some teachers joined in. He reminded them that intelligence wasn't a fixed label, it was a process. A choice to keep trying, to stay curious, to learn not just from books, but from life. One day, during a school assembly, the principal stepped up to the podium and addressed the crowd. There are educators who shape minds, she said. And then there are those rare individuals who shape hearts and perspective too. I want to honor someone who reminds us that teaching isn't limited by title or classroom walls. She turned and gestured for Mr. Reynolds to join her on stage. The crowd stood and erupted into applause. Nathan watched as Mr. Reynolds walked forward, not as a janitor, not as a former professor, but as a quiet hero who had taught everyone that learning could come from the most unexpected places. He was presented with a special recognition, Educator of the Year. Tears welled in Nathan's eyes, not just because of the award, but because he knew none of this would have happened if he hadn't failed, if he hadn't stayed late that night in the library, and if he hadn't been open to listening not to someone with a fancy title, but to someone with a lifetime of quiet wisdom. Later that night, Nathan stood outside the library alone, looking at the stars again. Mr. Reynolds joined him. You deserve that award, Nathan said. Mr. Reynolds gave a soft laugh. You know what I deserve? Peace. And I've found it. Here, with you all. Nathan turned toward him, determined. I've decided something. What's that? I want to teach too. Someday. Mr. Reynolds looked at him with the kind of pride that only a mentor could carry. Then promise me this: never measure your success by titles or salary. Measure it by how well you listen, how deeply you care, and how willing you are to meet students where they are. I promise, Nathan said. The moonlight cast long shadows on the campus grounds. The library behind them stood still and quiet, but inside its walls lived a story, a lesson of failure, redemption, and the power of unseen kindness. If you're a student struggling with self-doubt or failure, remember your greatest teacher might not be in a classroom. Sometimes wisdom comes from those we overlook. Stay curious, stay open, and above all, believe that your story isn't finished yet. Subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us all, greatness often hides in plain sight.